How's it going, guys? Spencer from Mark 7 here to go over Primer Express with you. Primer Express is our new low-cost collated priming system for both Apex and Evolution presses. Going over what's included with the kit, if you are buying this for an Apex, you are going to get the bowl and chassis, the ramp cover, the whole motor control box, power supply, a blast shield, a dual I/O cable, and various hardware and covers to complete your installation. If you're buying this for an Evolution press, the main difference is it comes with the new shuttle priming system. Your Apex press is already equipped with this system. If you're upgrading from an Evolution, you will need to remove your slide primer system and install your disc primer system. Now we're going to go through and talk about how to install, how to operate, and how to use the Primer Express. Okay, let's install a Primer Express on this Apex 10 press. First things first, just for clarity in the video, I've taken this press, rotated it 90 degrees on the bench, and removed the handle just so it's clearly to see. First thing we're going to do, we're going to take a 3/32 Allen wrench. We're going to remove the tube adapter. Set off to the side. Note, please organize all the hardware that you see coming off the press. If you want to remove your Primer Express at a later date and go back to a two-fed priming system, you're going to need these parts. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the cover using these 3 screws. These 3 screws will be reused, so keep them handy. They will be going on in a few seconds. So first things first, we're going to want to remove this dummy primer ramp cover. This is where Primer Express is going to install and it's no longer needed. First things first, we're going to take 3/32 Allen. We're going to loosen the primer disc bolt until it has a couple threads remaining. There's no need to loosen or remove the shell disc to install Primer Express. I'm going to simply take a small flathead screwdriver. I'm going to come underneath of the disc here, and with a little bit of wiggle, pull that dummy insert right out. Now we will leave this loose. Okay, first things first, what we're going to do to install Primer Express is we're going to install the bowl and chassis system. If you look at the bottom here of the ramp, this imitates the same dummy foot that we just removed. It's going to go in the same spot, nice and gentle. We're going to go underneath the disc, slide it in. I'm always going to keep upward pressure on this. There's a lot of weight just to let hang on that plastic foot. I'm going to start installing the hardware. Once I get this support bracket in, I can lift my hand off for a second, grab the flathead screws, and start to install. With all the hardware started in its respective holes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up on the back of the unit here and take the tension off the nose. Going forward now, I can secure the bowl and chassis to the primer housing. This is to ensure that everything is in alignment and the primer foot is where it's supposed to be. When everything is snugged up, we can then tighten the supporting strap. This floats. This is the most important here. We want to make sure that both of these are aligned, the tension is off, and we can come on the front here and attach. Last thing we're going to do is come in and tighten the primer disc. We do want to make sure that this is tight. Last step, just to check your work, we're going to go in here, we're going to actuate the compliance mechanism. We're going to push it all the way to the primer load station and let it go. It should spring back right to the primer station. If you have any sort of binding, first thing you're going to want to check is you're going to want to loosen these 2 flathead screws again, lift up on the back, and then tighten these back down. What happens if you do let this droop, it will then kick the foot up and cause a little bit of binding on the primer disc. We do not want that to happen. Before I install it, I want to talk about the ramp assembly. The ramp assembly contains 3 main units. We have an inductive sensor here, which is what allows us to know if there's a primer upside down present in the ramp. These 2 sensors are for levels, and this is what turns the Primer Express on and off. It's your fill and drain sensors. To install this, first things first, we're going to look here at the motor on the bowl and chassis, and there's 2 main components. The short end here goes to the ramp. We're going to look for the plug that is on this. We're going to simply evenly push it in until we hear a click. I'm going to bring it around and set it down. We will fully install this later with the ramp cover, but what we're going to do now is we're going to come and just plug the sensor in. This can actually stay like this for right now. The next step for Primer Express is we're going to want to make the connections at the control box. I've already plugged the power adapter into the wall. I'm going to take the barrel plug it into the back. Now on this pigtail cable, we have two connectors. We have one labeled sensors on the back. That is the large data connector from the motor itself. I'm going to push it in until I hear it click. I'm going to come over, and then motor is this 2-wire. So come over until we hear it click. This auto drive sensor, I'll go over it a little later, is where you use your dual I/O cable. The Primer Express is fully compatible with Mark 7 auto drives for the Evolution and Apex. Using the included dual I/O cable, what you're going to do is you're going to plug the long male end into your control box. The other male end goes into port 1 on your auto drive. The other female end is if you're using a SwageSense accessory, this would plug into this port. One quick note, it is important to go onto the Mark 7 support page and update the firmware for your auto drive. Primer Express is now a new digital sensor underneath your sensor tab. So the next step of installation, we're going to install the Primer Express specific disc cover. This is different than the one used for stack priming. It's what actually clips the ramp into place. I've already started all 3 screws. It's the same screws that were used on the stack priming system. I'm going to get them down till they're almost snug. Back off a little bit. Now this next step is pretty important. So as you can see, this disc, when it's loose, has a little bit of play in it. It needs to be aligned. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the ramp itself. I'm going to use these ears, hook it under, come down, and you're going to hear that physically click. You're going to, this is how you know everything is nice and aligned. You have a nice positive click. I'm going to go and snug down the cover. To ensure that everything is correct, I'm going to come in, I'm going to press down on the locking tab, remove the cover, just to make sure everything is free and clear, come down, and make sure I hear a nice positive click. That's how you know everything is sorted. You should not have to force the ear down. If everything is aligned correctly, just a light push and the ramp cover should be able to be easily removed. Now we are finally ready to turn Primer Express on. Let's go over the control box and its features. On the back is a hard power switch, which I'm going to switch on. You'll hear an audible tone and to know that the box has power. Going over here, this is your start button, stop button, speed adjustment, and motor override. When you initially fill the unit with primers, you're going to want to have the motor override on. That sensor that we talked in here before, if it doesn't see a primer for a predetermined amount of time, it's a little over 10 seconds, it will alarm. This will let you know that you're out of primers. I can show you that by turning the unit on. Unit has alarmed. This is how it knows that it is out of primers. I'm going to press the stop reset button. That not only would stop the unit if it was still running, it also clears the alarm. So now we're going to get primers into the Primer Express. Note, please be wearing safety glasses when doing this. When operating the Primer Express, we will always have the metal blast shield present. But initial setup, we're going to leave that off just so we can make sure everything is running properly. Depending on the amount of primers you're using, the size of primer, and brand of primer, you're going to have to play with the adjustment speed to figure out what's best for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the unit motor override on so that will not alarm. Please note, when the motor override is on, the level sensors are completely turned off. You need to make sure when the ramp starts to fill, you turn that motor override switch back off, which will grant the function of the level sensors again. So motor override on, I'm going to press the unit on. I'm going to start a little less than half speed. Primer Express's funnel is fixed. You can add primers as the unit is running. one very important note of Primer Express, you need to make sure that your bench setup is level. If you notice that you have primers accumulating on one side or the other, the first thing I would check is your bench level. This bench here actually isn't perfectly level, so I actually had to raise these left feet to shift that. But going back here, so once again, I have the motor override switch on. I have a level about 4 or 5. Notice that as these primers work down, they were all able to flip to the right orientation. They should all be flipped by this last bridge area here. So now that I have my speed where I want it for the CCI small primers, I'm going to turn the motor override switch off, which will now turn these sensors back on. I'm going to turn the unit back on. And now the unit has shut itself off. It's okay in the beginning. If you get a couple upside down primers, you're going to have to figure out what speed and primer level really works for your application. What primers are you using? How many are you using? Is it large or small? It's all part of the testing process and kind of getting the feel for the unit. Once you have it set though, you really should not have to touch it. You should just be able to load and fill as you go. So the last thing I want to talk about here for operation is the sensor for the upside down primers. It's set from the factory to work with CCI small pistol primers. Just so you know, if you have a upside down primer, I'm going to use this Allen wrench because it's an inductive sensor. It's going to come in, it's going to alarm the system and illuminate this yellow light. I'm going to clear the sensor really quick by pressing the red stop button. If you come across that this sensor is not set for your desired application, you're using a different brand, going to a large primer, it's super easy to set it. All you're going to do is you're going to loosen this small Allen head screw. You're going to lower or raise the sensor until you have the light off. It's what I usually do is I'll loosen this, I'll bring it down on top of a primer, the light will go on. I will then raise it until I have the light go off. I will clear it and then you should be good to go. The sensor should never fire when you have a correct stack of primers here in the ramp. As soon as it has it upside down, it's going to have the metal anvil facing up and it's going to illuminate that sensor. Really easy to set. And once again, once it's set for the primers that you're using, you should not have to touch it. And just like a stacked priming system, the Primer Express has a blast shield included. Just for safety purposes, we always recommend using the blast shield with Primer Express. It's just a second level of safety. So all we're going to do, so once again, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take this metal cover here. It has 2 threaded standoffs. There are 2 threaded holes in the primer housing itself. I'm going to be gentle. I'm going to snake it over the inductive sensor. I'm going to come in here, and drop the screws in, just tighten them by hand. And then I'm going to come in with my Allen wrench. Once again, install the blast shield as before you start loading, but your troubleshooting, your speed adjustment, all that should all be done. Your sensor adjustments should all be done before the blast shield comes on because you do have to remove these 2 bolts to take it off. Thank you guys for watching this installation video of Primer Express. Everything I talked about today is included in your manual, which is in your box. If you have any other questions, concerns, or problems, please shoot us a call or email at our customer support lines. Thank you, and catch you guys next time.